Have you achieved success and a high income, but still lack personal fulfillment and work-life balance? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful But Struggling podcast. Join us as Erin, Eunicia, Joanne, and Mim share transformative insights and practical strategies just for you. Discover real stories and lessons that will elevate your personal satisfaction, professional accomplishment, and financial empowerment.
Hello, welcome to our podcast, Successful But Struggling. And I could not wait for today to have this conversation and have you all listen. I am here with my super co-host, Eunicia, our wealth strategist and knows all the financial things that I know nothing about. And I have been very curious and I'm going to go just straight to it. I was at a doctor's conference not too long ago. And, sometimes these doctor conferences are very boring and, talking about all the medical stuff. And this one was kind of unique. And we had a panel and we were able to talk about some of the stressors that as physicians, which overlaps with a lot of other professions, go through. And so we talked about life balance and some people were able to talk about that. We talked about stress and we had experts talking about that. We talked about the system and all the things going on in medicine. And there was someone who talked about that. And then, money. We started talking about so many financial concerns and it was dead silence. And I was looking around and I was like, where is my expert friend, Eunicia? And why isn't she in this room? Talking to all these successful physicians who are doing fairly well financially. And yet when we talk about money, it's like you dropped a bomb in the room and it's kind of sad and so many fears and you have all these very smart people. And then when it comes to all these financial strategies, it seems like we're talking in a different language. So I could not wait to come here because I know that you work with a lot of physicians and you've helped so many of them. And I love hearing you talk about it. And you've also worked with a lot of very, very successful business owners and other professionals. So I know that you're going to give us some magic. So I'm very curious because I can see what's going on as part of the group, but you on the other side as the expert, what are some challenges that you can see from the outside? And even more important, what are some of the fears that you hear a lot of these physicians and other business owners go through in regards to all of this?
Joanne, that's not only such a good question, but it's a question that really hits home for me because when I speak with a lot of very, very successful business owners, very successful entrepreneurs, very successful physicians, that you're right, they do make a lot of money. And yet when it comes to how they resonate with it, when it comes to how they feel about it, when it comes to the sense of security that maybe they feel or they don't feel, that elusive sense of the money's here today, but what happens? God forbid I lose my job. God forbid something goes wrong with the practice. God forbid. And so that in itself is a huge stressor. And since we're talking about stress and fears, and it's that fear of the unknown that oftentimes is very much paralyzing. But it's not the only fear. It's the fear. There's another fear that it's kind of competing with the fear of the unknown, but it's in a very different category. It's in the category of who do I trust? And one of my most favorite questions came actually from a surgeon at a conference that we hosted in October in Miami. It was just an unbelievable experience. And his question was, Eunicia, who can I trust? And the reason he asked that question is because we were talking about the mess, just from the angle of looking at the different types of accounts that a successful person accumulates over a lifetime or during their lifetime. And looking at that mess, the question was, who do I trust? because historically what we know is that a lot of physicians, they feel, and it's baked in reality, they have that sense of feeling of betrayal, and their trust is it's being taken advantage of simply because they're physicians, and there's the perception that they have all the money in the world, and because of that, oftentimes they feel like they're being targeted by salespeople, targeted for higher packages simply because they are physicians. And so they've been robbed of that feeling of, I can trust because I know that people are going to be in my corner, because historically that's not what they've experienced. And as if that's not enough, there's this other huge stressor and fear, is the fear of, am I good enough? And is what I'm doing going to be enough to leave a meaningful legacy behind? Because I talked about this on a different podcast just earlier today. It's this fear of, the more people have, the bigger the financial fear that shows up. And that's especially true if we're dealing with the household where the husband or the wife are the bigger, or are the primary earners, whether it be through the business or it be through an actual employment. And so those are some of the fears that we see. And like I said earlier, they're not in the same category. And when they're competing with each other and they all come at the same time, you can imagine, just from a financial perspective, what that looks like in the head of anyone. But now, especially when we're talking about physicians that are feeling like they're on their own island, it becomes a very lonely place. And it's a place that I don't wish upon anyone, because I see it with new clients that come to us, and it's just not a pretty place.
Oh, Eunice, I feel like I had to take a deep breath right now. I felt all your words all over my body. And some of them are, right, like my own fears coming out, right? And I just have to bring it back and make it highlight these fears of what you said. Fear of the unknown, that uncertainty that could be so stressful. And huge, the fear of who can I trust? And I will ask you some more questions about that, because I know for myself and my friends, it's such a common thing. And I like how you said it. It's part of it has been programmed in us, sadly. And I'm so glad that we have people like you, that you're so personable. You're so unique in what you do. I hear you in conversations with your clients, and I'm like, oh my goodness, everyone needs Eunicia. And I think you do that so well in giving that trust. So again, this is a little tangent, because I want to get back to that. And then, oh my goodness, the fear of my good enough. And it doesn't always make sense, because you can be so successful in some areas and yet have this confidence. And I like to think of confidence. Sometimes it's really good in some areas and sometimes really low. And it comes out when in these fears. I'm so glad you brought that up. And then the legacy piece, that fear of, is this all this effort worth it for, oh my goodness. Again, I'm like, I want to like go across this video and hug you, because these are all so important. And how, like, think about it. How many of you think of your financial expert? How many of you think, I am going to call this wealth expert and she's going to be talking to me about betrayal and uncertainty and trust? This is why we are so lucky to have Eunicia here. Again, I go into tangents because this is, I get almost emotional hearing you say all these things. So thank you. So, but then talking about that, and we mentioned all these fears that you were able to identify so clearly. And thank you for that. Thank you for that as a physician and knowing that you're helping others. How do you and your team, how do you kind of uniquely help someone going through even just one of these fears, overcome these challenges and help them through all of this? I'm very curious.
It's first of all, I appreciate all of those words that you said. They're so kind, and honestly, they brought tears to my eyes. I'm trying to not pad my eyes here because it probably would not be good on camera, but it's I thrive, Joanne, to see clients for a change feeling like they're heard and they're understood. Because when they come to us, they're robbed of that joy of being able to just be, to feel, and to be okay with feeling even the fears that they're feeling, but to know that there's a solution to those. And to your question about how do we help them overcome those fears is, first and foremost, we meet them what they're at. And because we have so much empathy, but also because we have so much experience, not just my personal experience, having gone through that and feeling, I'm not a physician, but I've felt the same way that a lot of our physician clients and a lot of our high income individuals feel in terms of that island, in terms of the worthiness, in terms of feeling being taken advantage of, or maybe feeling like they don't have access. That's another one, feeling like they don't have access to all of the solutions. And so the way we go about that is, as we meet them where they're at, we want them to also understand the different options that they have at their disposal. Because what we found is that when our clients understand that maybe historically they've been very in tune with options or solutions A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever, but there's this whole other world of 1, 2, 3s that could be combined. And guess what? When we combine them, to your point, using your words from earlier, magic happens. Now, all of a sudden, they know, without me constantly telling them that trust, not me and not us, but trust our process. Now they know that that process comes together beautifully. And we know that that process works and that it's customized and catered to the individual, because they'll come back and they'll say, hey, Anicia, we were talking about whatever the topic was. And I remember you saying, I just found a document that I think I might want you to look at. Can you, I know that maybe we haven't gotten to this yet because it's all about the journey, but can you take a look at it to see just how messed up it might be? And that's when we know that they not only feel heard and understood, but it's an open environment where they know that they will get the absolute best view into how bad, how good, and what can we do to rectify the good or the bad, or maybe make it better of the situation that they're already dealing with. I know that was a long-winded answer, but hopefully addresses your question.
Yes. And I feel so inspired because as a coach, I always say that we have to start with awareness and then the acknowledgement. And it sounds like you and your team does that, not just you as the expert, but then to help the client, which is also beautiful because it's not right. A lot of times we just think that we're just going to give our money to someone and they're going to do weird stuff and that we're not going to know, and that you take the time and the effort to, like you said, meet them where they are and sit with it, with the fears. And I love how that mix. And I think that that's kind of part of that magic sauce of the empathy and the personalized aspect. And then the tools, the expertise, right? Like the actual things. Like I love how you say the things that are not Googleable. I cannot pronounce that word. That because a lot of times we think, oh, I don't need an expert. I can do it all myself. But if maybe part of it, but is that where you want to spend your time? And do you want to, talking about trust, do you want to worry if you're doing it correctly? Or would you rather have someone who has all the expertise, right? And going back to doctors, right? Like that's why we're specialized in it. So this is the analogy here in terms of our finances. We wouldn't go to anyone to tell us how we're doing physically, right? Like we're not just going to plug in our money somewhere randomly. So it's again, it's in how you say, which is again, in thinking of what makes the difference that makes the difference in you meeting them where they are and having it customized. It's what it's my analogy in coaching of that's what makes a good coach, that it's someone who, and you're saying the same words, that's what you and your team does. It's, we meet them where you are, we meet you where you are, and then we give you something that's unique to your needs and where you are and what you want for the future, that legacy that you were talking about earlier. I mean, it's not what I think, probably not what comes to our minds first when we're talking about these things, because we normally just shut it down.
You mentioned something that's very, very critical that I want to pause for a second, because everything that you said, I think it's right, because we hear it from everyone we talk to, and especially from our clients, as far as the stuff that we do and how we are, I think, special. I hope special, because we care. But here's the other part of the secret sauce. It's our clients. It is 100%. Our clients are 100% part of that mix. And the reason I want to pause on that for a second is because oftentimes you talked about Googleable. I love the way you pronounced it, by the way. The stuff that we talk about is not Googleable. And yet, when individuals come to us, they'll say, I want that secret sauce. I want the things that are non-Googleable. And do you want to know how we know if a client is indeed the kind of client that we enjoy working with and the kind of client that will gain the biggest benefits? It's the client that's not just asking about the secret sauce, but is willing to lean in to say, I hear you. I see what you're talking about. I know I need it, and I'm going to go after it. Versus the individual, if you're listening to this, you're going to fall in one or the other category. You're either going to say, oh my gosh, Eunicia strikes a chord. What she says rings true. I feel it. I've been feeling it for years and years. Or you're going to say, oh, but I have a him or I have a her. I have somebody that's helping me with my money. I have a CPA that's helping me with my taxes. I have somebody that's teaching me things about my business. I'm good. But I really would like to hear about some of those strategies. Could we talk about them, Eunicia? That's the kind of person that is more about, they're thinking about what they have versus what they could have. And that in itself makes the difference between the people that truly excel. They're already successful, but they want to take their success to the next level on the financial front, just the same way that they took it on the business front or in their careers, versus the individuals that are so focused on what's already there and being okay with that, wanting more, but not willing to go after it. And those two, we see that difference all the time. So when we talk to potential clients, if we see that they're going to constantly get stuck in their mindset, our job is not to try to get them out of there because we're going to drag them along. We're working with the people that are already wanting that next level of success.
Wow, that's really good distinction, and that your team knows that. And because I can imagine people who's like, just give me the info. Of course, right? Like people sometimes just want the info, and that's not right. Like how we help, and it could, right? Like it could be helpful maybe for a little bit, but that's, I don't know. Again, that's the analogy of reading a personal development book and getting a coach. I keep on thinking of the parallels with what I do. And that's a good way of how I explain it of, yes, you can have the information, but do you have the accountability? Do you have the hand holding? Do you have the trust? Do you have the explanation? Do you have the expertise? The person who knows actually how to do it. So that's a really good distinction.
I especially love what you said about just give me the info. And I have to pause here for a second because this is especially true among physicians. And I'm gonna pause because if we're here to try to change mindset, here's again the two camps. It's the one camp of just give me the info, and can I pay for this amazing information after I've implemented it, after I've gotten well, versus the camp, we're talking to physicians, right? Where we want the patients to go see the physician. Oftentimes, the patient will never even see the physician until after the insurance card has been run through the system, and we know that there's money to pay for that visit. So if we're thinking about mindset, if you're listening to this, I want you to listen to ask yourself, what is your mindset? Are you constantly looking for, give me the free, just give it to me, I'll get it done because I'm so smart, I've got the people. If you've got it all, why aren't we further ahead? And if you don't, the question becomes, have we become too reliant on a system that has taught us that it's okay to trust, again, the same people that you don't feel that you can trust, the same people that have lost your trust, but we're asking the same questions that we've always asked. So it's a major difference and a major change in mindset. And frankly, our job is not to try to convince someone that they need to be thinking about their money differently, or they need to be thinking about the stressors from a financial perspective differently, but rather to help identify where are the potential gaps that if we change, we talked on our episode earlier, right? About, changing those baselines, those basic things that can make the world of difference. Is the same thing on the financial side. What are those basic things that if we change, not just in our portfolio, but in our mindset, will deliver huge, huge value long term?
That sounds such a cool tag, not just in our portfolio, but in our mindset. That's a good one. And I love all the parallels. So let me ask you this question. So because we talk about the trust, we talk about the fears, we talk about the distinctions of the different mindsets, and the person who almost knows enough to be dangerous because then they believe that they have it, and that you can tell that, they're not ready. But if they have enough curiosity, like you said, if it's someone who calls you and says, Eunice, I've heard all these good things about you and your team. How can you help me? But I want to hear something unique. I don't necessarily want to hear all the tools. How do you start with that trust? Because that has to be so difficult with what you do. How do you handle that?
I actually love when individuals come to us thinking that they know it all, because we know what we know about what we know and what we do. And we know that history tells us there's no way that they truly have as comprehensive of a picture and as defined and customized of a plan as they might think they do. So I'll give you a perfect example. It was actually one of our clients who's a surgeon. And there was an introduction to another surgeon, and he said, Eunice, I don't know if you can help this guy. He seems to have it all down pat when it comes to tax savings. I said, awesome. He said, I am so sorry. I kind of feel like I'm maybe throwing you to the wolves. Let me know how it goes. Please don't shoot the messenger. I think you can help him. Long story short, jumped on the phone call. And we just had a dialogue. Listen, I am not married to the outcome. Not everybody's going to be our client, and vice versa. We're not for everybody, but I do enjoy having a good conversation. If we're going to talk, at least let's have fun. So I jumped on the call with this gentleman, and so very, very, inspiring discussion. And so we started kind of talking. I said, listen, I don't know if we can help you. I really genuinely don't. But since we were introduced, I'd love to add whatever value that I can. Let's talk about some of the tax strategies that you do have currently, that you've been taking advantage of, that you're working together with your team. He said, it's not so much a team. It's, I heard about him at this conference, and I heard about him. Somebody told me about something else. And so we kind of just, work with my CPA. We kind of put them together, and I think I'm doing pretty well on the tax side. I said, okay, well, let's talk about them. So we kind of started going through each one of them individually. And what came out was something that was just beautiful, but sad at the same time. The beautiful part was that our hypothesis was true. He had some great strategies, but the sad part was they were all focused on the real estate component. And some of the tax strategies from a real estate standpoint were very much attached to the tax code, to areas of the tax code that are no longer applicable or that are being phased out. So now this potential individual client asked the question of, I know that these things are being phased out. What's next? So was he missing a huge opportunities in terms of even tax strategies and investment strategies that had nothing to do with what he was already doing. But the things that he was already doing, some of them are not going to be applicable in the future, in the very near future. And so the conversation then continued. And obviously, we were a good match and we were an amazing fit. But it started out with exactly what you said. How do you deal with when you go into a conversation where basically it's kind of like, let's figure out who's stronger. It's not about who's stronger. It's not about who knows more. It's about how do we collaborate and work together towards your common goal at the end of the day, because ultimately, and frankly, that's all that matters. This is not about us. This is not about Excelstra. This is truly about you and your bottom line. And frankly, the legacy, same legacy that you're maybe afraid of and not know how it's going to pass on and how your children are going to take advantage and take care of it. That's what matters most. Everything else falls into place.
I love that example. And it sounds like you do even better when there's a challenge. It's like, let me tell you all the things that we can do to make you even better, to help you even more. It's not that what you're doing, it's wrong, but there's these pieces that are missing. There's a gap and we can help you fill it with trust, helping you with empathy, dealing with all the fears, and hand-holding if needed, it sounds like. So again, that's incredible. And if you're listening to this and you are wondering, yikes, what's going on with my financials? Where am I in terms of my fears? And do I have someone I can trust? And even more important, what's in my future? Because a lot of times we feel that false sense of reassurance that things are okay now, but we have to think of like you said, the legacy and our future. So if you're curious, do not forget to go to our website, because there you will find even more information of what we all do, what Onicia and her team does. And you can click in her bio and get some more information. She only has very few spots for calls, but feel free to go in and get the information and get to your next level if you're ready. And again, stay tuned and we'll see you in the next episode.
Don't miss out on more strategies that will elevate you to new heights. Visit successfulbutstruggling.com now, where you'll discover exclusive resources and the opportunity to connect with each of us individually. There you can dive deeper into how you, too, can take your personal and professional game to the next level. And if you're serious about optimizing your results, take 2 quick steps now. Number 1, connect with us on the website. And number 2, tune in to the next episode.